So what we're going to be doing now is I want you to open ZBrush. So the version that we have installing here is 2025.3. I don't know what the latest version of ZBrush is. That's something you can check on later. So the only reason I'm bringing this up is I need you to be aware of the version, because not all projects can be open, like updated and then go back to a previous state. So this is ZBrush. For those of you who've never seen it before, it's an amazing piece of software. I like it way better than Mudbox, but I still wanted you to see Mudbox to see what other alternatives we have over there. All right. And so what we have here is the intro screen. This window you can totally just close. And one of the things that is pretty daunting about ZBrush is the level of menus that you will find. Like the things that are nested on the other things are just incredible. But the most important part is that most of the things are going to happen on this side of the screen. You're going to have, the view that I have right now here on the top is going to be my, let's call them templates. They call it differently. That is a light box. But they have things that you can just start creating out of. It's pretty common to just grab a base and start modifying that base. The base can be created really easily inside of here, or can be imported from Maya or other pieces of software. Now, the general idea is that we're going to be working with, and Lily, is the audio fine?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So we're going to be starting with just regular bases. We can just import them from Maya, and then we can just modify, start poly sculpting. There are really cool armatures that you can start with. You can create projects coming from C-spheres and other things. We're going to be talking about those more complicated facts later, but for now we're just going to keep it simple. And so let's just add a regular cube. So for now I'm just going to open that one cube. In here, if I want to move around, I can just left click and drag. By the way, this software is way better performed if you're using a drawing tablet. That's not to say that you cannot use everything with a mouse. But if you have a drawing tablet, this is the best place to start using it. In any case, if you left click and drag, you can just basically turn this object around. If you middle click with, actually it's right click with Alt, you're going to move that around. So rotating it with left, and then Alt, right clicking to move around. Then you can change perspective really easily if you hold the left shift. Like I want to see it from the side, and that is going to completely snap it into place. Right? So the controls get a little bit time to get used to, especially if you're coming from Maya or other software, because they are not using that standard, right? That this is their own. If you control left click, that's going to let you zoom in and zoom out. So basically you have the A, right click, I'm going to just move this object around. Control and left click is going to let me zoom in and zoom out. Alt and right click is going to let me move this thing around. Now, over here, I don't know if that is the default. I don't remember having used ZBrush this semester here, but I don't know if it's using any of my preferences. You will see that I have two lines. That is because I have symmetry mode enabled. Is that the case for everybody? I don't know if that is the default. Is it? Okay. So that is going to let me start doing some strokes on the shape. All right. I don't really want to do that, so I'm just going to be removing this. If you want to start from a blank new project, the only thing you need to do is go here to Document. As you get to see, we don't have like a file menu. You can just go to Document and then say New Document. Hey, do you want to save anything on these documents? The answer for me is going to be no. But notice that I still have my cube on the side. And the reason is ZBrush is meant to be creating you some renders, 2D images, something like that, something akin to it. Everything that we do here is a tool. So whenever we're constructing objects, whenever we are building something, we know that as a tool. A tool can have many other tools append to it. If you're coming from Maya, that's going to be something like I have a model, and the model is made out of different groups that are just append together. The whole scene itself, it's what I'm going to be able to render here, but what I'm doing, the modeling that I have on the side, is that tool that I have enabled in this other area. It comes with some tools enabled by default, so if I go here and say something like, no, I want to do this simple brush, you will see that I can start painting, but then if I try to move around, it is going to be like, no, you can't move around. That is because now I am in draw mode. You get to see that I have draw enabled here on the top, and I don't have the ability to go to edit at this stage. And the reason is, as soon as I start my scene with something that is being drawn, like if I grab my cube that I have earlier and I put it here, notice that I can still add it, but all of them are clones of the same one. And if I try to, left click, right click, do anything to move around, I won't be able to see it. So this is why it asks you, hey, do you want to change the saves or save the changes on your canvas versus the, hey, I still have the cube on the side? Because those are two completely separate things. This one here in front is going to be my document, my canvas, my whatever I'm drawing these things into. I can add them as much as I want, but it is not going to let me edit those. If I go to my document and say, hey, you know what, never mind, just do a new document, say, no, I don't want to change anything. Notice that I have draw by default, but I can just do a cube. If I hold shift, it's going to put it there. Before I do anything, I just drag and dropped it into this world. Notice that I have a edit function right next to it. That is a function that I cannot modify once I start adding other layers on top of it, because that is what it's giving you the idea of, hey, I'm in a scene for modeling or basically creating my render, or I'm in a scene that is going to let me modify the geometry of the tools that I'm working with. So the shortcut for that is T. I always forget the shortcut, so I always just click on that thing, but that is going to give me this regular view. You get to see that I have a not very colorful grid underneath the object. I can enable and disable that here. I don't remember what it is. One of these options is going to let me just show the grid. There's the floor right here. So that's basically like your grid inside of Maya. They just call it floor. You can put the floor in the XY position, XZ position, whatever. I have this perspective enabled. That is going to distort my shape if I go around. Like if I was able to move these to the side, I will start seeing it from the side. If I disable the perspective, you will notice that I'm in orthogonal view. So where Maya, it's asking you, hey, what orthogonal view you want to see this at, you can actually rotate the object. And this is still in an orthographic view, or orthogonal view, not a perspective view. I will have no distortion. This is with distortion, this is without distortion. So it's kind of hard to get used to this, especially if you're coming from Maya in which you don't have the front, the side, and the top, but whatever goes. You can also just turn around the view with this guy that is going to be snapping it to particular axis, and you get to see what is the front, what is the side, what is the left, and things a little bit more easily. I like having my grid just because, again, I'm coming from Maya and it's a little bit easier for me to see. But yeah, then I can do multiple things to this cube as I have it in this area. Right now, this is a sculpting cube. It is not a regular base cube, and that is a really important distinction because I can create geometry here the same way that I will be creating geometry inside of Maya. But this is not something that is parametric. That's not something that at this point I can change. And by that I mean I'm going to make yet another document. I'm just going to say new. There's nothing to submit at the moment, so feel free to experiment. That's not the scene that I want. I'm just going to be making a sphere 3D, something like this. And I'm going to go to my edit mode. Here, all the way to the bottom, I will be able to go into my initialize options, and I can change the actual object. This is not squishing the object. This is basically changing the definition of what my object is going to be in the first place. This is not I'm constructing this guy, or actually I'm constructing this guy out of equations, and then at some point I just need to initialize that to something that I can start sculpting and working with. If I try to do that to enable sculpting, please convert to a 3D primitive. Right now it's a sphere, that I created using parametric equations, basically how many subdivisions horizontally, vertically, and whatnot. But right now it's just like, hey, you really want to modify this thing, you need to go into your make polymesh 3D. That way you can modify it. Here, I will have that option on the top. Here on the tool, notice where my mouse is located, make polymesh 3D. And at that point, yeah, sure, click on that. There. Now it's a cube, that's a sphere that I can start modifying. Do you see that? And I can start adding information onto it. Now, the resolution that I have here is pretty low, so I'm going to go back and notice that I have a count on the top. Right here in this area, it says that this has 7,682 active points, and that is the total poly count that I have for my object. I will be attaching other things later, but for now, that is just the overall. This is how deep my shape is. And so if I want to add something, notice that it's pretty faceted and I don't love it. I can just do Control D for creating a subdivision level, and that is going to increment it drastically. How much was it before? Let me do 7,000. If I do Control D, now it's 30,000. And now my lines are going to be a little bit more defined. Now, where this software shines in contrast to Modbox is going to be the subdivision level that I can reach. These I can create masks and layers like I had in Modbox, but these are not going to be limited to the level that I was working at. And so another couple of things is like the definition of the shape is going to change in comparison to the subdivisions that I had inside of Modbox. When I had a pretty dense, or actually not as so much dense mesh, and I started moving things around, you will see really spikes coming out of the shape because I don't have enough resolution. Then at that point, I will need to subdivide it to create more shapes, but I'm going to show you something in here that is basically magic. So when we have enough resolution of an object, and I don't want to modify just one particular or increment that one particular area, I can redistribute my triangles really easily on the fly. That is dynameshing, which is something that I wish at least is present in Modbox, but we don't really have that option. We'll get there in a second. But the important part here is like I can do Control D multiple times. I can get into the millions without really breaking a sweat. If you try to get into millions in Modbox, that's not a great experience. Okay, in any case, I can just do that. I can change the alpha that my brush has, something like, I'm gonna do this one. But if I just drag, you see that it's gonna start adding skin. That's probably something I might want to add at some point, but maybe, I don't know, I wanna have like a star, right? I just wanna have a clear defined star in this area. I cannot do that with this, because otherwise it's just gonna be using the brush. But I have different modes on my stroke. This one is dots, basically, click, 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 click. Every time that I click, it is going to, or every time that I move my mouse while holding it, is going to keep on appending stars. I have other options like, let's say, drag stamp, which is going to be basically how large you want your star to be at. You click on something, you drag it out, and it's just going to be doing that strength. I can change that to drag rectangle, which is something similar but not quite. And this is going to be like how large you want the star to be. And then you let it go, and that is going to create that star. All right? The most common function is, of course, going to be dots. And you don't want alpha off, you want alpha 1. You can always modify the strength. Notice those two circles that I have underneath my pencil. Well, that basically says how fine is going to be the transition between the full strength and the border, which is smoothing. So if you hold and press spacebar, that is going to let you change the size of the brush, but also the focal point. You get to see how that is changing the small sphere into like, this is a super soft brush versus it's now a super rough one. Now, here I have something called lazy mouse enable, which is really, really powerful. Let me just move this to the side to get more information. Lazy mouse is like, hey, you know what? I want to try to do a really close to straight line, but I really can't. Well, two options. You can hold shift, that is going to let you do a lazy mouse-esque kind of line. Oh, my strength is too small for that, I think. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But if I change, if I want to not have that thing following me around or make changes to it, there's this stroke menu on the top. So stroke, lazy mouse, I can, stroke, lazy mouse, I can enable, disable that, or making it a little bit larger. So that is going to be following a little bit better. That's going to give me more fine control because of all the ways that my hand can shake, especially while holding it through a mouse. If I do control, that is going to let me mask. When I have mask enabled, that means no, I won't be able to modify that area. So let me disable lazy mouse. And now I'm going to be incrementing these. But you get to see that the masked area is no longer being affected. Okay, so I can make like a crater effect. Now let's say that I want to modify that part. I just hold control the same way that I mask. Instead of inverting, or instead of deselecting this and selecting everything else, I can just hold control, click outside, and that's going to invert the mask. And so I can increment this volume, or I can hold shift, no, actually it's alt, and that's going to let me push into that. Alt is going to be the opposite of what you're doing. So if I was pulling, now I'm going to be pushing, and shift is going to let me smooth that surface. So that way I can create that crater-like effect. If I want to get rid completely of the mask, I'll hold control and drag out. Just do it once because that's also the shortcut for the other tool that I will be showing you later. But for now, yeah, I have that. I can smooth out this star. If I want it to be a little bit more discrete, I can just do this. Let's say that this is the scar of a character. Well, I can just do a little bit of blur on the side by smoothing it out. All right. So for now, what I want you to do in the next, I don't know, 5 minutes is just play with that one brush. That is the standard brush, which is the default one. If you were to click on this, it is going to show you all the many different brushes that we have inside of here. And the brushing system is super powerful. That's going to actually let me append other things. Like I can create a tool and create a brush out of that tool that is going to let me append it to objects. What do I mean? Well, for instance, I can 3D model a button, right, for a shirt or whatever. And then I can transform that button into a brush that I can stamp the same way that I stamped the star. Now, this is real geometry. This is not like what we did inside of Substance Painter, in which we were just creating normals out of the surface. This is actually giving you some geometry to work with. This, unfortunately, is going to make it super large, and because of that, I wouldn't be able to use it directly inside of my Unreal Engine scene. I mean, I could with Nanite, but we're not going to get there. This has a UV unwrap by default, but it's not great, especially once you start modifying it. So the typical workflow would be like make something like look like this guy, then retopologize it, do the UV unwrap on that retopology, and that's where you're going to start using and creating your textures. So just in case you didn't know this, when you open ZBrush and you leave it running for a second, that is just going to show you a screensaver-esque with stuff that other people have done before. And this is where I feel bad about myself because I don't know if I'm ever going to reach that level of skill. Look at that. All right, so I'm going to leave that running for the next couple of minutes. What I want you guys to do is just play with the brushes. 5-10 minutes is good. And I'm going to walk around the room just to see where you guys are at. All right, and we are back. So there's many different tools, as I was saying. Be sure to play with them. I mean, worst case scenario, you just reset your interface or whatever. There's a couple of tools, like if you want to modify the shape, but you just want to make it, you know, elastic, like plastic or like clay, you can do this. I will make these larger. There's this move tool that is gonna let me move not the object, but just some shapes, right? If I wanted to create like a horn-like creature, I can start just taking these guys out. I can push the other ones in, and I can just start doing this without, you know, moving or starting to sculpt this part out. There are many different types of move. There's one move elastic and move topology. This move topology relates to like what you did with your assets when the object was made out of multiple pieces, one on top of each other. If you say move elastic, all the pieces are going to move together. Move topology is going to be based on what your selection is underneath the frame, right? Like if you have an eyeball and you have a face, that is going to be, I move the eyeball or the face. This one is going to be like move everything together. We have inflate, we have trim adaptive, we have many different tools that I encourage you to play with. I don't think we will have enough time in a class just to do a single one session with all the tools that these things have. There's this flatten, which I really like because it's gonna let me do really cool, easy, flat structures for whenever I'm trying to do a 3D print or something like that. The counterpart to my standard is something I use a lot, and that is the clay and the clay buildup. So let's use clay buildup for a second. I'm going to be moving this file size or the brush size down. That is going to start doing those kind of squares, and that is just because of the alpha that I have on this area. But if I go here, you will notice that it's raising my surface like if I was adding pieces of clay on top of my shape. If you hold shift and then just go around, that is gonna smooth it. And you can always change the alpha to something else like, I don't know, maybe this guy. And then when you do that, the area is going to be less obvious that is being adding that clay. And you can always just smooth things out. You can actually go levels down. That is with Shift and D. This is not removing the levels. This is just going levels down as I was doing inside of Modbox. I think Modbox makes it a little easier to see whenever you are doing the page up, page down. But here under my subtool, I'll have different things that I can take a look at, right? Let's now finally figure out what subtools are, like the settings. So inside of my subtool, if I wanted to, I can append another shape. If I want to say I want a cylinder right next to it, I can do that. I can disable that. I will show you some booleans later today that are super crazy in comparison to Maya and any other software I have seen. Booleans in here are amazing. But then I have multiple tools, and I can just focus on what tool I want to see at a time. Like I want to focus just on this one. Notice that I can modify these, but I'm not able to modify the other one because I don't have that one enabled. So I can click on this, enable this, and see the other one disappeared just because the eyeball is hidden, right? That's a really easy way of creating eyeballs on a surface, by the way. So let me actually take this one out. I'm going to say delete. Yep. Says you cannot delete safely, but that's fine. I will do another append, and I'll do a symbol sphere. I have to say that I started using ZBrush when they had the old widget, which was super counterintuitive. It has like 3 circles, and then you move those circles, and that does crazy things. They came up with this widget a couple of years ago, which is way closer to what any other modeling software is. Previously, it had like a series of circles. They wanted to be like original, and then a straight line, and then you get those circles together. That will be scaling it up. You grab the very last circle, that will be moving it out around. It was just complicated to remember. But here, you have this widget that looks like the universal widget in Maya, and it's simple to just, I want to scale this down, scale it from the center. Oh, I'm actually scaling the wrong one. Scale this one from the center. You can move the pivot point if you want to. I'll say, show that. I can say, put it on the center of the world. I can modify the home of my pivot. I need to unlock it first. So modify that. And now all of my transformations are going to be coming from this side. So if I scale down, it's going to be in that area. I can always go back to center it. And I can put it in the center of the world if I want to. But in any case, I can do a lot of different things with this. Let me put this eyeball, now you know it's an eyeball, here for my creature. And now I can go back to this one, and I will be not using that one, I'm going to be using clay buildup, and I can start building around the eyeball. And that way, I can start creating an eyelid really, really easily. That's something that I can retopologize later, but now I have the eyeball reference. So I'm going to do a little bit more over here. Now, you see that this is starting to get a little bit too faceted. That is because I'm in the low resolution mode. If I go up, that's just going to be with D. That's going to maintain that in the upper levels, and I can just do more details. And then I have my eyeball over there. Let me click on the sphere. I can just give it a hint of pupil in here. Let's do Alt. And I'm going to go back here on the top, and then I get to see that eyeball. Now, the resolution is crazy. There are some automatic retopology tools in here that are good enough for our class purposes, but probably not for a AAA professional studio. So we will talk about those later. For now, another thing that I want to explore is going to be probably the last thing that I do today, and that is going to be exploring on this area. We're going to have a lot of different options under geometry. So tool or subtool is going to show me the actual tools that I'm working with, like the groups. The next one, geometry, is going to let me perform some operations on that geometry. The one that I want to work with today is going to be this one called Dynamesh. So Dynamesh is by far my favorite tool inside of this piece of software. What Dynamesh is going to do for me is it's going to do a geodesic voxel modeling of your thing, and it's going to reconstruct that object. So what do I mean with that? When I make my model, a sphere is going to look like that. And then I'm going to have a lot of information that is going to be making my sphere. All these parametric equations, like the radius, the height, subdivisions, and whatnot. So this was created in such a way that it will let me add more resolution or remove resolution. When I transition that into a sculpting software, now everything is made out of the quads that were generated alongside the parametric equations, but I can no longer modify the shape. If I make one of these quads, for whatever reason, larger, like I can enlarge, let's say just that one, the lines are going to start being a mess. So something like this, everything made out of quads. I don't know what I did wrong over there, but something like this. Everything is going to be the quads. I made one of those quads larger. And because of that, the whole shape looks super weird and faceted as I was seeing it a second ago. Well, what I can do here is create that dynameshing system, or use that dynameshing system, in which now my sphere is going to get reconstructed with smaller cubes. Like, think about Minecraft. Just the cubes that you see in the surface are the ones that are getting rendered. And that is what this thing is going to be about. It is going to take a look at that object, and it's going to be like, how many cubes can I fit in this scene? Once I have created these cubes, I'm going to merge that into a single object that is going to look really, really nice, and is going to just move all of the vertices around in such a way that the area is evenly distributed. Let's see. If I grab, I'm going to use the tool Inflate. And I'm actually going to go a couple of levels down. See, I can just say, what tool I have selected first? Yeah, this one. So I'm going to go into my geometry, and I'm going to go to a lower level just to make my point a little bit clearer. Over here, notice these big quads. I'm going to say delete higher. So that is going to get rid of all of the levels that I had on the top. And I can inflate the surface just to exaggerate the effect. So I don't remember the shortcut. EN, inflate. That makes sense. All right. Do you see how large and massive these quads are? Well, now I'm going to go into my Dynamesh, and I will enable Dynamesh first. Now, that still looks faceted, but take a look at the poly count. Poly count is 7,000. I go here and say, hey, data mesh that for me, please. And now I have 64,000. I'm like, okay, what happened? Well, let's go back and I'll show you another tool here to see the wireframe. That is going to be draw polyframe, that's what they call them. Look at the number of frames that or the quads that I have over here. I'm going to go again and dynamesh it, and now look at the number of quads. There's a mix between quads and triangles, don't worry about that. But notice that this thing now has a really good distribution in comparison to what it was before. Yes, it is still faceted, but that's something that I can just get rid of if I just hold shift and start smoothing that surface out. It was faceted in the first place, so it doesn't really know how to smooth it unless I smooth it by hand. But that distribution of triangles is something you cannot do in Modbox. And that's one of the things that was the selling point of this software. Just being able to construct or reconstruct this object on the fly, and you saw how easily it did it, it's amazing. Now, I'm gonna undo that, and I can change the number of quads, or sorry, cubes that I create in my world. Now, I will be completely honest with you guys. I know that this resolution is how many cubes they have, but I don't have a really good rule of thumb. And for those of you that have used ZBrush before, what is the number, the magical number that you will use on a resolution? Sometimes I do 512, and that's way too many. So when I reconstruct this object, 512, and I'll, in order to reconstruct it, hold Control and drag like if you were deselecting stuff. And it is not really doing a lot of the magical resolution that I wanted. So Dynamesh these, I guess it's as good as it will make it. But this number, the resolution itself, should be changing how many vertices I am getting. So again, for those of you that have used Modbox before, or sorry, ZBrush before, what is the magical number that teachers tell you for using on your resolution? Just play with the value until it looks fine? Because that's what I do.
I feel like I don't go past the 200 something.
200 something, even okay. And you can always subdivide after the fact, right? So that's something that is nice because the subdivision is going to maintain the same proportions. But sometimes you don't want to, subdivide too much. So look at this, that's a problem. So I'm going to keep on inflating that surface just to exaggerate the problem. But then when I do a dynameshing, 512, enable dynamesh, and then, that's now 1 million vertices. And then when I inflate, you get to see that part. Poly count, look at that. This area is really nice, this one is not so much. I can dynamesh again, and notice how everything got completely distributed. And it happened super quickly. Again, it's like magic. That is pretty much everything that I have at the moment. ZBrush on its own could fill a full semester here in college. So I'm not expecting everybody to get everything out of these. This class itself was a quick introduction to see what you can do with this. Now, the reason we are in this area right now, it is not immediately coming, is because I want you to take a look at the next homework assignment, which is going to be starting to create your Freddy character Fazbear head. And in order to do that, I have the 3 minutes. We have an assignment due tomorrow, another one on Thursday, and another one on Friday. The idea is you're going to be creating new heads for your character. Now, it looks like too little time, but you're not going to be doing the whole modeling on its own. What I want you to do is go to the assignments tab, get into the next homework assignment starter, which is going to be character 1. Let me edit that so I can see it as a student. There's a starter, so click on that, open the starter, and you're going to be getting this file. Download the file, and I'm going to go into my downloads folder. I'll take Freddy Fazbear, and open this up. And then I have scenes and I have source images. There's a file called Bonnie United or Bonnie Separated. And that's, oh, that's an MB file. I need to open that up. All right, sorry about that. Let's do scenes then. So go scenes and go for the one that looks for head. That's a Maya file. Unfortunately, I cannot just import a Maya file in here, and Maya takes like half a minute to open in these computers. We have like a gazillion plugins enabled for us to use, and we don't really use that many. All right, so I have my head for Freddy Fazbear. If you expand that, you will see that it is made out of multiple groups. So Maya being Maya is super slow. Give it a minute. There, I have multiple groups. So I will go to File, Game Exporter, and I will put that in my desktop just to make things easier. I will call that Freddy Head, and I'll export it. So I will export from the group, export. Do I override it? Yes. If it's asking you about the FBX review, just disable that flag and that's it. Now in ZBrush, I'm going to go into a new document. And here at the end, I'm going to go to a Sphere or something, some other document, other tool different than this. I'll hit import, and I'm going to go to my desktop and Freddy Head. So that's going to bring in Freddy as a tool. Why no mesh is imported? Let me go back to Maya, see what's wrong with this. That, export that selection. If it doesn't let me, just to be sure that I can show you something today, I'm going to have to export it as an OBJ. So export selection as an OBJ file. And then in ZBrush, import. I'm going to try Freddy one more time. Import. Oh, here. That's a subtool? I don't know. Sure, but it's not working. I don't know. I will do the OBJ. Where did it say the OBJ? File, export selection, put it on my desktop, please. Freddy Head. I don't know why the FBX is failing. I will need to check that in. And if not, if anything, I can give you another FBX file later. But the OBJ head is the thing that I'm going to be importing. There you go. That one came in. And that is my head for Freddy. So if you go to the subtools, in the FBX, you would be able to have it separated. In here, because it's an OBJ, it wouldn't do that. There is an option here to separate my groups. So polygroups here, and then you can say auto groups. Polygroups. From polypaint. I want to separate that as subtools. Subtools. Split to parts. And that's going to give me individual parts. So what I need you to do for this homework assignment is going to be edit this guy in such a way that you can start making the document, new document. No, don't save any changes. Here, edit. And the only thing I want you to do is start modifying the shape in such a way that it looks like something else. That is going to be how you're going to be creating the heads. You should not be spending more than half an hour on this head. Really, it's just a template like, oh, if I add, I don't know, horns in here, I can make this change from inflate to move. And I can start making these like a, well, That kind of looks like a demon-esque Freddy. What I want you to do is really just prototype 3 heads. And you have 1 due tomorrow, 1 in Thursday, and 1 on Sunday. From those 3 heads you're going to be submitting, you're going to be choosing the one that you want to make your character out of. Right now, because we're going to be keeping all of the proportions for Freddy, the only thing I need is the head to look like what it's supposed to be, right? If you want to make it look like a cat, you can do that. If you want to make it look like a dog, a giraffe, the world is your oyster. The only restriction is you cannot change the proportions of the body. You can change how thick an arm is if you want to later, but that's a later future you problem. But you cannot change the length of the arm because the bones we're not going to be modifying, and all of the rotation and the pivot points are going to be exactly the same. So let's say you're doing an elephant. It would be a really chubby elephant because you cannot make it super large. You're making a giraffe. It has to be a giraffe with a really short neck because we're not changing that. Does that make sense? For now, the only thing that is required for you for tomorrow is make a head. We're going to start next Wednesday's lecture with, I want to see the head of the character that you did in such a way that we can course correct if needed for homework assignment 2 and 4. And I just realized that it's 10:54. So apologies for the time. If you have any questions, feel free to stick around. But that is it for today. So talk to you